So agricultural contractors will be very pleased to see that they are a part of the essential services list that was produced by the government last week to be able to continue to allow what is deemed essential. That is the sticky point. You can go and spray a crop, but you cannot go and spray a paddock of thistles. You are able to ensure that you can look after animal welfare, yet you may not be able to do your crutching. And of course, there is a lot of things going on, and they continuously move month in, month out. So what can we delay and what is essential? I'm joined on the phone by CEO of Rural Contractors New Zealand, Roger Patron. Good evening, sir. Thank you very much for taking the privilege. I don't like that word after earlier before because we get in trouble. Thank you very much for joining me tonight on the show, Roger. So firstly, let's talk about what are some of those things that are happening around the country right now for your members.
Well, the first thing is that once the alert level 4 was put in place and the whole business of essential services arose, there was a lot of confusion as to what was included and what was not. Now, my members have some 51 different activities they do, from baling, silage, spraying, root raking, wind blowing, and all sorts of things. And some of those will be essential because of the time requirement, and some of them won't be. So it's a little bit hard for them to understand or to be able to meet the requirements. The other thing is that most of the essential services refer to one specific site. And of course, my members will go around and may do 5 or 6 different sites in one particular day. And therefore, it becomes somewhat problematic trying to get them to understand, and in fact, trying to determine exactly what it is they're able to do and what they're not able to do, and how they can tell the difference.
All right, so if you're a fencer, a sheep dipper, or a contractor at the moment, and you want some clarification around whether, if you may know you're essential, however, for how long and what is put in place, please put your questions and answers in the Facebook Live comments below, and I'll put them here to Roger. This is what the Q&A part is all about of Sarah's Country.
Sure.
So, Roger, so Friday, 5 o'clock was the cutoff for the registration part to MPI. What
Yes.
sort of numbers did you see of businesses taking that up?
I have no idea because we've not got any information at all from MPI. If you to register, you were required to have at least 5 members, or less than 5 workers, or less than 5 workers, and you could not maintain the 2-meter separation.
Right.
But people have registered, and they basically had no acknowledgement or anything else, and they've sort of carried on somewhat more in hope and faith than anything else. One of the things that we have done is to provide them with a suggested draft so they can carry a letter from their employer stating who they are, where they're from, and what they're doing, their essential services. So when stopped by the police to check as to why they're on the road, they've got some documentation to prove it.
See, that's the interesting thing. We're leaving it up to the discretion of the police to know what is essential on a farm and multiple different types of land uses and multiple different types of rural service contractors that support them.
Well, exactly. We've been working with federated farmers and with the AgCarm, which is the agricultural chemical industry. They've got very good contacts within MPI and within the government. So rather than us sort of make yet another approach, we work through them because at the end of the day, it's the farmers who we are supporting by doing the contracting work. You mentioned, interestingly enough, the issue of thistles. Now, spraying thistles as such might not be essential. But if it's in a paddock where horses, for example, can get the thistle stuck in their eyes when they're eating, it may well be a question of animal welfare, in which case they may need to be dealt with. Those are the sorts of tricky issues that the members are having to cope with every day.
Do you look after farriers? Because apparently the horse world gave Damien a talking to about that being a very essential service, which was put back on the list. Is there quite a few things that are like that, David, where they were, whoops, we missed that one. Missed that one.
Yes, we don't have anything to do with the farriers at all. But there are a whole number of anomalies that have arisen, and to be honest, you would actually expect them because life is quite complicated, and people just think that they're doing the right thing, but in fact they may not be. And the people enforcing it, as you say, may not understand the difference between spraying this paddock full of thistles because it's an animal welfare problem and spraying that one just because it's something they want to do.
And everyone's got different farm management practices as well. So,
Exactly.
I mean, that's a whole nother kettle of fish that we won't get into. But, Roger, what about the labour shortage in the contracting field? There's a lot of international labour we rely on, the English, the Irish, the Scottish and the Welsh, and everything in between. How are you getting on with visas and recruiting people and keeping them here, or them getting stuck here too?
Well, we're towards the end of the season, so some of them decided to go home early because they wanted to get in before they shut the doors in England, and others who have stayed here, the government has announced that they will extend the visas to about the end of September.
Fantastic.
So at this stage, we wait and see what happens. I haven't heard of any chronic labour shortage in any particular area, but of course the other thing that we face is that with the international borders being closed now and likely to be closed probably up for the next 6 or 8 months at this stage, and if they're not closed, the lack of air travel to be able to bring people across means we're going to face some real problems on the next season, which is 2020-2021.
Going into the springtime, for sure, absolutely. What about the redeployment of the healthy and willing, I'm calling them, healthy and willing unemployed? There's people that would certainly love to get away from the missus and probably go and do a hard day's work on the farm. So, I mean, that's the one thing. How do you redeploy labour when you've got restricted movement of humans as well?
Within alert level 4, you really can't, is the short answer. But of course, one of the things is that the rural contractors tend to be working in isolation on their own in most cases. So the 2 metre separation doesn't necessarily impact upon them too much. It may be that when they've taken, say, 3 tractors to a paddock to do 3 days' work, they may have some difficulty keeping 2 metre separation coming back in the ute or the minibus or whatever, and they may have to look at how they do that. But essentially, it's at this stage using labour who have been made unemployed elsewhere is not really an option because they can't travel to wherever it may be.
Yeah, it's very much a very sticking point. What about preparing your members for a lockdown being longer than 4 weeks?
Sorry, what was the last end of the question?
How are you able to sort of prepare your members that it potentially could go longer than 4 weeks and the effect that that will have on not only their businesses but people who are not essential now but will be essential going into May and June, for instance?
I think at this stage we've been concentrating on the immediate future and working to see how we can work our way through the immediate lockdown and wait and see if that is effective. If it goes longer than 4 weeks, and in some cases the nature of the work that's being performed will change because it's that time of the year or whatever. And we'll have to really look at how we manage that a bit closer to that time.
Absolutely. Thank you, Roger. You're taking a very optimistic view, and I shouldn't be putting any scaremongering that this will go in longer than 4 weeks. However, farmers and, of course, contractors certainly have a long-term view on their business, and there's a real flow-on effect that they try to be able to prepare for. What are some of the key messages that you would like to get out to contractors and also their farming clients on how to deal with the contractors to make this go smoothly?
I think the first thing is that there needs to be communication between the contractor and the farmer as to what they want done. And I think if they take the simple guidelines of that the work has to be either in support of the farm, to do with food production or animal welfare, and it is something that needs to be done in the next 4 weeks to make it essential. If it's something that could be done in 8 weeks' time, well, then it doesn't need to be done straight away.
And sorry about that, Roger. And that then comes down to the discretion of the individual farmers. Is a lot of your members actively taking up the wage subsidy? and as well, of course, making them aware of the mortgage freezes and things like that. What about business loans as well, that these contractors may have, and the support the government can give to those?
Well, what we have done is to make all of our members aware of all the packages that are available. I've been sending out a continuous stream of emails, and indeed a continuous stream of text to tell them I've sent them an email, just so they don't miss it, and making sure that they're aware of what is available and where they go and get it. I don't get feedback as to whether they've gone and obtained the wage subsidy or the mortgage holiday. I provide them with the information, and the members choose to use it as they see fit.
Sure. We talked earlier in the show, and I'm an optimist, Roger, like yourself. We're talking a lot about the innovation that's coming out of this. It's only been a week or two, but are you seeing an adoption in technology and an adoption of new behaviour around technology that can make people's lives easier now, but would probably become the new norm in the contracting world?
There is a significant amount of technology in the rural contracting sector, the GPS control of tractors and auto drive tractors, use of drones and those sorts of things. All of those are currently in place and becoming more and more a part of the rural contracting sector. I'm not aware of any innovation in the last few weeks to overcome the current situation. And I don't really expect any. There might be one or two guys who have had a little clever idea and done it. But at this stage, I haven't heard of any.
I was just reading from your press release here about farmers protecting themselves from risk of transmission by using tools such as TrackMap and being able to use to monitor chemical use and receive farm messages around deliveries and things like that.
Well, a lot of our members use TrackMap or something similar, which means that the vehicle is guided around the paddock, applying the right amount of seed or spray or whatever it may be in the right place, and then giving the farmer a map of what's been done, where it's been done, and how it's been done, and it's all on record. That supports the invoice, and the job is done. And then when they go back to do it next year, they've got it all planned out because it's already been mapped.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us on the very first episode of Sarah's Country. That's CEO of Rural Contractors New Zealand, Roger Patron.
This is Sarah's Country.